I first pedaled my older brother's fixed gear bike in 2012 when I was a sophomore in high school. And the very first bike video that I made was in 2014 for my video productions class. And now, in the beginning of 2025, I've been running this very bike YouTube channel for nearly 10 years. It'll be 10 years in May. And I'm blessed enough that I can call this thing that is talking to you about bikes through the internet my job. What's up, I'm Zach. I've been riding fixed gear bikes exclusively for the past nearly 13 years, just because it's one of the most fun things in my life. Here's 13 years of bike advice in 13 of my stories. Biking is worth it. I alluded to it before, but I fell in love with fixed gear riding when I first rode my big brother's fixed gear in 2012. I was originally riding a mountain bike that was about 3 sizes too small for me, a Specialized Hard Rock, a silver one, to school to commute almost every day, and I wanted to get a faster bike. He told me to try out his bike in the garage, which was his giant Bowery, which was pretty blinged out, and riding that thing around the block, I had no idea that a bike could go so fast, and I was immediately hooked. I then sold all of my video games, my Pokemon collection, on Craigslist for pennies, which is kind of hurting me now because those games like Heart Gold and Platinum are probably going for a lot more than I sold them for, but I sold all my video games so that I could buy my first fixed gear bike, a Motorbicane track, off of Bikes Direct. I wasn't even able to raise all the funds I needed to buy that bike. I got maybe half of it by selling my video games, and my mom covered the other half because she figured, hey, now I don't have to drive you to school and you can just ride your bike. But making that sacrifice to go all in on biking, to have a bike that I thought was the coolest looking bike ever, even though it was just a stock beginner bike, something that was insanely fun to ride, proved out to be well worth it. And I rode that thing almost every single day. Bike for the love of it. A typical little brother story, right? When I got into fixed gear biking and all my brother's friends, he had a huge fixed gear crew that was also super into riding. Once I got into it, the little brother, they all stopped riding. But I kept riding my bike because it was just one of the most fun things that I ever experienced. And on top of that, it was good exercise and made me feel good. And there's a lot of pressure, whether it's to be the fastest cat out there, to have the coolest bike, or to ride the farthest distance. But none of that really matters if you don't love riding. And that's why I bike, and that's all biking is really about. Even if fixed gear isn't cool anymore, I will still be riding my fixed gear just because I love it. Biking with friends is gonna sound so cheesy, but it is a magical thing. Because I loved biking so much and I figured out how to get around the city that always sleeps, Elk Grove, California, really well on my bike, I got a lot of my friends into riding because I knew the best routes and I knew how to have a good time on my bike, whether we're riding fast or not. I met one of my best friends to this day, Min, through fixed gear riding, and then we got all of our high school friends into biking, whether it was fixed gear or not. The whole point of our little group was just to have a good time on bikes, and because it was something that we could do, being high school kids with their driver's permits, stuck in the suburbs where you need to drive 30 minutes to do anything. And although I didn't have a super great time in high school, I was probably had undiagnosed depression for most of it. Some of my fondest memories was hanging out with all my high school friends just late at night in winter and just biking to different parks in the neighborhoods and just shooting the shit until 1 in the morning. The bike is therapy. One of the people as part of my high school group of friends was my high school sweetheart, and we both chose to go to school in San Diego in an attempt to naively make it work. It didn't work. She broke up with me after about a month of us being at school. Compound this with my pre-existing depression, I wanted to throw myself off of a bridge. To make myself feel better, I impulse bought an All-City Nature Boy off of a guy from Pedal Room, which I still have. It's over there. Can you see Ricky? He's hanging out. And while it wasn't like a financially smart decision as a broke college student to then go spend like $1,000 on a brand new bike that I don't need, it did make me feel better. And one of the things that I learned from doing mental health counseling is that I need to distract myself so that I don't think about my depression, and sometimes it'll just go away. And this is probably a really sick and like weird way to think about it, but wasting that money at a time that I really shouldn't have was probably the best thing to do for my mental health, because I was living in San Diego. I didn't exactly have friends that I knew, and now I could focus on riding these stupidly long distances and just turn off my brain on this bike that I purpose built to be like this super long distance crusher. And I rode my first Century to see one of my high school friends up in Irvine, which, if you've ever ridden the California coast, is the wrong direction because the wind is always blowing against you. That was probably the hardest ride of my life. I cramped up real bad. I legitimately didn't know I was gonna make it. I had to ride on I-5 for like 12 miles. I-5 is the main freeway, just on the shoulder with semi-trucks passing me by at like 65, 70 miles an hour. Not a great experience, but I'm alive, and that's all that matters. And my All City Nature Boy, which I don't really consider my bike anymore, it's just whoever's bike wants to ride it, and currently it's Chloe's bike, my wife. It's just the communal spittoon at this point. That bike, this bike right here, is what inspired me to start my YouTube channel, because I just needed to get my mind off of being so damn depressed. And building that bike and riding that bike a ton of long distance rides is what gave me the confidence, the balls to start this YouTube channel, because it helped me realize that I actually know what I'm doing. I'm a strong rider, and I can talk about my experiences on the bike. As cliche as it sounds, focus on the journey, not on the destination. Because sometimes there isn't even a destination. It's like when you're riding your bike, say 100 miles or whatever, what is the destination but going back home? You're just doing a lot of in between. It's all about the journey. I try to apply that line of thinking also with things like my depression, because it feels like when you're depressed, I'm fine now, by the way. Thank you. When you're depressed, it feels like there is no end in sight and that you will never get better and that life is hopeless. So during this time, I applied this line of thinking to just enjoying the process of figuring out who the heck I am as a person, what I have to offer the world, and how I can be a better person. I read a ton of self-help books. I was going to church and praying a lot, and that might not be your cup of tea, but it helped me out a lot. And I kept making videos and sucking at making videos for this YouTube channel. You want to see how bad my videos were in 2016? Go watch this one. I don't even know what video that is. Like, I don't remember it because my mind wants to forget it because of how embarrassing I was in 2016. What is the destination of life? Ultimately, it's dying. So why are we rushing dying? We might as well enjoy the middle part between the hyphen between your birthday and your death date on your tombstone. That little hyphen is your entire life, and that is the most important thing. Every bike ride eventually ends at home. I mean, assuming you don't get hit by a car or something, you know, knock on wood. So focus on enjoying the ride rather than ending the ride. It's better to spend money on bike trips over bike parts. 2017 was one of my most life-changing years ever. It was the year that I went on exchange during my last semester of college to Taiwan, which is the birthplace of most of our bikes, including my Wabis. But it wasn't so life-changing just because that's where they make a lot of our bikes and our bike components, but because of the people that I met there. I met Hal, who is the owner of Faith Gear. He's become one of my best friends. And it was so funny because I went to Faith Gear because a bunch of you guys recommended that I go visit his shop and potentially buy a bike from him. And I was just shopping around for a bike. And then we were talking about like what I do for fun. And I was like, oh, I make YouTube videos about bikes. And then he was like, wait a minute, I've seen one of your videos. And he was just like one of the nicest guys and made sure that my trip in Taiwan was fun as far as bikes go. And I went out to a lot of the Faith Gear night rides and we became really close from those. And also on that trip, not exactly bike related, I met two of my best friends that just lived across the hallway from me. And also met one of my friends, E, who was the leader of NTU, National Taiwan University's Fixed Gear Club. And then we weirdly got reconnected in Michigan, of all places, 2 years ago. Instead of going to Taiwan and taking a trip for 5 or 6 months, I could have built a really baller bike. But the lifelong friends that I made there, that I'm still in contact with to this day, heck, Hal was the photographer for my wedding just last year, that is irreplaceable. And the memories that I made and that I make whenever I take my bike somewhere rather than spending it on like a fancy custom wheel set or whatever, which is also a fair use of money. I just personally would rather travel with my bike or take a bike trip, because that is way more life-changing in ways that I could never imagine than just buying the fanciest crank set on the market. Dreams come true. If you can't stop, don't want to either. In 2018, I was making bike videos pretty consistently for the past 3 years. And while I was making some money from it, I was well below the poverty line in California. And my dream, by any stretch of the imagination, is a pretty reasonable and humble dream, was just to be able to make bike videos for a living and not have to worry about paying rent and putting food on the table, and maybe if I'm really successful, eating out once a week with my friends. And in September of 2018, I pitched to Wabi Cycles, who was actually the first company to send me a review bike, which is like really nice. And they said that they were big fans of mine and love my videos, which is just like the nicest thing that you can say to anybody that makes content. I pitched to Wabi, what if I was your sponsored rider and you could pay me every month, I'll sell you some ad slots, I'll ride your bikes, and I'll represent you guys. And to my surprise, they said yes. Wabi even asked me like, hey, how much money do you normally make? And I told them, well, let me put it this way. With your sponsorship, I am living. Without your guys' sponsorship, I am surviving. I rep Wabi so hard because I'm a big fan of them. I love their bikes. I actually was thinking of building up a Wabi Classic instead of my All City Nature Boy, but then the Nature Boy won out because it was purple. That's literally it. They are the company that I would spend money on, and now I get to represent them and ride their bikes for a living. This is my dream come true. And it's all because I just kept making videos and I asked, what? Do hard work and ask for what you want? What? Is that how the world works? Being a bike YouTuber is the best job in the world for me. In 2019, I was living in Sacramento and I was still depressed. And I was taking medication and I did the mental health counseling thing. And while it made it manageable, it didn't really feel like I was truly healthy, and nothing really felt like it made my depression really go away to the point where I didn't have to think about it. It was always something in the back of my mind like, man, I kind of feel like dying today. Maybe I'm gonna ride a little riskier today just to see what happens and maybe feel something. And I figured that some of the happiest time in my life up to that point was being in Taiwan, where I was in an environment where people didn't put their expectations on me and the pressure of how I should or should not be living my life implicitly or explicitly. So that year I had the luxury, with the help of Wabi Cycles and all of you guys watching my videos, to just say, fuck it, I'm out of here for a while. I don't know how long, I'll see what happens. So I took another trip back to Taiwan, and that was the first time that my depression just completely went away. And I think it was because everything was so fresh and new and exciting, and I had to make it on my own money, doing my job, running my business, yelling at you about bike parts. And knowing that I was completely on my own in everything gave me meaning to my life, to the point where it was like I wasn't just stuck as a college graduate, 23 years old, in my parents' house in the suburbs. I felt like I was actually doing something in my life. And while I wasn't making a lot of money, and I'm still not making a ton of money, being able to just travel with my bike and see what happens is a level of freedom that actually cured my depression when even popping pills and talking to a therapist couldn't make it go away. And I was only able to do that because of the flexibility that being a YouTuber offered. And now here I am 6 years after I took that trip just traveling around Asia with my bike. I still don't have depression. I'm still perfectly fine and perfectly happy. More biking isn't better. In 2020, I did a 30-mile a day, which is about 50K a day, bike challenge to see what would happen or if I could do it. And I hated it. Like, people that are really into biking usually idolize how fast you can go and how far you can go and how many miles you get and how much elevation gain and how many mountains you can climb. So I decided to try it out and see if I could ride 30 miles a day, which in my mind was a pretty reasonable amount. That's only like 210 miles a week, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. And what I found out is that it takes so much time riding about like 15 miles an hour. That's 2 hours a day. And I don't always have that time. And also, I was so sore that my thighs felt like beef jerky. Like, it was miserable. And trying to do that challenge made me feel like biking was a chore and that it really was a job that I just had to show up for and do, rather than something that I wanted to do just for the sake of doing it because I enjoy it. And it pretty much sucked all of the joy out of cycling. So now I have a very loose rule and I don't even always follow it because I always feel better when I ride my bike. It doesn't matter how long or how short it is. And now my new rule, which I haven't exactly stuck to, but that's fine. Ride at least 5 minutes. And that's something that's super easy to commit to. And just the act of getting on my bike, once I get into the habit of it, I usually end up riding more than 5 minutes because it's fun. That way, I'm still getting the benefits of cycling while keeping it sustainable and something that I could do every day for probably the rest of my life. And it's something that I would want to do for the rest of my life, rather than a stupid challenge for YouTube views. On the plus side, what was it? I think it was like Men's Health magazine or something. They plagiarized my video and put it into an article that shows how far YouTube has come, or even professional publications are plagiarizing YouTubers. If you're riding fixed gear, you'll have a community anywhere in the world. From 2019 to 2021, I was traveling a lot with my bike, and I only stopped down in the US because of the whole, you know what happened during that time period, okay? I don't have to say it. I went to Taiwan, Thailand, Singapore, the US, and Mexico. And it doesn't matter where you go because fixed gear is such a specific type of cycling where if you get it, you get it. You get why you're doing it. The bikes are cool. It's really simple. It feels like nothing else. It's the same wherever you go in the world. But because it's so specific, people get really excited when they learn that you're a fixed gear rider, because they have somebody new to talk to about fixed gear bikes. And the whole vibe of fixed gear is pretty like casual, as in not competitive. And a lot of times people just want to make friends. And in 2021, I went down to Mexico City and stayed there for, what was it, 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And I made friends that I really miss because they're just so welcoming and inviting. And we had such a great time being sleep deprived and riding to the pyramids like 70 miles round trip. By the way, Mexico City crew, I just got married, and this isn't set in stone, but like Chloe and I, we plan on having our honeymoon in Mexico City because I loved it so much. She wants, oh, you could see her. Maybe we'll see you soon. Yeah, you are. It's okay to fail. A lot of cycling is very like sport based, where it's like how many physical accomplishments can you do and check it off a list. But most people don't ride bikes to get accomplishments. We just ride it because it's fun and makes us feel good. And I attempted to ride my bike about, I forgot what it was, like 600 or 700 miles over the course of 10 days or so, which sounds doable. Sometimes it's like easier on paper than in reality. From Sacramento to San Diego, California. And I got the ride sponsored by Wabi Cycles. By the way, they're the sponsor of this video. Go check them out, linked in the description, because they're really sick. I got a series of ride videos sponsored by Wabi Cycles of just documenting my experience. And for like a month up to my ride, I was sick with like the gnarliest cold. I didn't train at all. I didn't test out my gear. I was only able to ride maybe like 5 miles a day instead of like the 20 to 30 that I was supposed to be riding to condition myself. And the day came where I was supposed to start making videos, and I just said, well, it's sponsored, so send it. And the first 2 days were so windy, it felt like Odysseus's sailors opened up the bag of winds, but instead of blowing me away from home, it was trying to blow me back to home. And on top of that, I found out that when my bike dropped because there was so much gear on it, it ended up making my front brake rub. Like, brakes are actually death. And trying to pedal that hard up Bay Area hills with like 30, 40 pounds of gear. Again, I was dumb and didn't test out my ride equipment before leaving. I ended up injuring my ankle, and I had to call the ride quits after 3 days, only making it like 120-ish miles or so away from home. And pulling my Achilles tendon, that injury kept me off the bike for about 3 months. And from that whole experience, I learned that it's okay to quit. Sometimes you have to quit. Sometimes you learn a lot from your failures. And also, why the heck was I trying to ride to San Diego in the first place other than content? And trying to prove to myself that I'm a hard-ass rider? And I realized that it wasn't actually my love for cycling that was fueling that attempted ride to San Diego, but rather it was my pride. And pride can lead you to dangerous places. I love riding in the Midwest. In 2023, my at the time girlfriend, now wife, was finishing up her master's degree at Michigan State University in the great city of East Lansing, Michigan. How do we even describe it? It's a college town. You see kids playing beer pong on the lawn, like...
Next to Capitol.
It's next to the Capitol. But I actually started hosting rides in East Lansing, Michigan, where I thought there would be exactly 0 fixed gear riders. And to my surprise, about 7 or 8 people showed up every week to ride what we called Fixie Church on Sundays. There were people in Lansing, in East Lansing, and other surrounding small towns whose names I forget. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the place is you're from. You don't know what the hell Elk Grove, California is. That's my hometown. There were riders that came out from Detroit just to ride every week. And while riding in Michigan, honestly, kind of, to put it lightly, ass with the infrastructure and just riding on essentially highways forever, and the snow and the drivers not being super nice, but that's like anywhere, mostly. What really surprised me was how nice Midwesterners are coming from the West Coast. Look, I'm not trying to throw shade, but California people are kind of antisocial in the way that we exclude anybody that we don't know. Californians are very cliquey, myself included, where we would rather talk to people that we know and only talk to someone new if we get introduced, that kind of thing, because we feel that if somebody's trying to talk to us, even if it's at a ride or something, it's like, oh, what do you want? You're kind of weird. Do you want my money? Do you want me to sign a petition? But in Michigan and even Chicago, I didn't feel that at all. It felt like even though people were like very different ages, our youngest rider was 17 and our oldest rider was, I didn't ask, but probably in their 40s. But we still felt like everybody was together and part of the ride. And it's that Midwestern hospitality that I really liked, where even though I wasn't from there, I still felt very welcomed and still felt like we were actually friends. When I play video games, I normally play tank or support. I like to support the team and make sure the team can do what they want to do. When I play music, I'm a drummer. I want to make sure that everybody's together and I want to be the foundation for everybody to have a good time. And when I host a ride, I also want to do the same thing. Make sure that everyone's on the same page, everyone's in sync with each other, and everyone's having a good time. And not being weird at the back of the ride, just like being a loner and being like, nobody noticed my cool bike. And in the Midwest, in Michigan, in Detroit, in Chicago, I really feel like I vibe with the people there because the Midwest is like playing support and making sure that everyone's on the same page and that we're all riding together and that we all feel included and that we're all talking to new people, because that's the whole point of going to a bike ride, isn't it? Not the case in California. I'm really gonna date myself because like nobody's playing this game anymore, but the Midwest is like playing Mercy, while California is like playing Genji and rushing in and dying. Good bike friends, the ones that are so good that you can just call them friends instead of bike friends, they are more precious than their weight in gold. Out of anybody that I've ridden with in the world, the person that I'm most in sync with is Hal, the owner of Faith Gear, and one of my best friends. We are just like on a whole nother level where we don't even need to talk about what's going on in the ride. We don't need to talk about the pace. We don't need to talk about when to take breaks to eat at 7-Eleven and pee. We don't need to talk about how much fun we're having. We're just so locked in when we ride together. And because of that, last November, we rode from Taipei to Taichung, Taiwan, which is about 150 miles with the route that we took. And while it was one of the hardest rides I've ever done, I'll say it's like the second hardest ride, maybe the first. It was also one of the most fun and one of the most memorable rides that I've ever done. And it really made me feel like a kid again, where we could just forget all of our worries in the world and just ride bikes together and be in the moment. He wanted to record some skids and then ended up crashing on my bike and making my wheel all wobbly for the rest of the ride, for the rest of like 135 miles or something. And then we freaking sent it down a hill and almost died. It's only funny to say it now, but it's like, man, we really could have ended the ride in a hospital 6 months from now. And it just feels like every time that we ride together, I know that I'm going to cherish those memories for the rest of my life because of how much fun we're having. And that is irreplaceable. And here's a bonus one for 2024, because I got married last year. You don't have to marry a cyclist. Just, support each other's hobbies and interests and like be cool about it. But you don't have to marry a cyclist, because if you're marrying a cyclist, you're probably marrying a dude. And we're only not even a month into the year, but this is something that I really learned this year. Slow is more fun. So last week on Saturday, I hosted a fixed gear century ride and I made it public. I don't normally make it public because I like to be able to control the pace of the ride and make sure everybody's on the same page and having fun. And Patrick Fixie King, that's his Instagram name, his real name is Patrick, or so I'm told, came to the ride and he brought a lot of his fixed gear friends. And our ride ended up being 2 rides, with a fast group with Patrick and a slower group with me. And in the beginning of the ride, we were all pretty much together, except we dropped one person, which felt pretty bad. But at the beginning of the ride, I said, hey, let's ride really chill, like 13 to 15 miles an hour, conversational pace, make friends, talk to somebody new, ride with somebody new. And like, that's the whole point you're here, isn't it? And then we're smashing at like 20 plus miles an hour and get all spread out. Because I'm on a new diet, I got gnarly leg cramps and I got dropped super hard at my own ride. Like, how big of a meme is that? Getting dropped at your own ride. But I decided I might as well like try to make a slow group while I'm getting dropped. So I called 2 of my friends from other century rides because I know we're on the same page about how chill we want to ride. And we made a slow group and we're like, yeah, party pace crew. And getting dropped at my own ride was the best thing that happened at that ride, because then I could actually ride slow enough to talk. We stopped for lunch, we grabbed some beers, and that reinvigorated us to just have a good time for the remainder of the ride. And we were talking and laughing and joking the entire time that we were riding. And when we eventually regrouped with the fast group in Davis at like mile 60, 65 or something, it was like dead silent, even though there was about 12 people there. It was like pulling up to a library. It was weird, with fixed gear bikes all over the lawn. And I'm just guessing that everyone was so gassed because they were riding so fast. And I felt almost bad that I was having such a great time because everyone looked hella tired. The intention for us when regrouping was that we could finish the ride together, but they were just riding too fast for my taste, cooking at like 20 plus miles an hour, because I actually want to be able to talk to people and to make friends. So even after regrouping, me, Chris, and Jericho, we decided to hang back and do things at our own pace and to actually enjoy the ride. And finishing the century with them at a very casual, very conversational pace, I can now say that Chris and Jericho have gone from being my bike friends to my friends. We just have talked so much over the course of the entire day about everything that they're no longer just bike friends, but it's become more than that. And for me, that was the whole point of the ride. And that can only really be accomplished when you decide to ride slower and be social and have enough breath to talk. I've realized that I am not a competitive cyclist. While I can ride fast, I don't exactly enjoy riding fast, especially for 100 miles at a time. So I sold my Apple Watch. I sold my Wahoo bike GPS. I uninstalled Strava off of my phone because when I ride my bike, I just want to have fun. And I don't need an app telling me how fast or how far or how high I am riding to tell me that I'm having fun. I have nothing to prove to anybody. I am riding my bike for me. So I just got rid of it. And I've been having more fun ever since I stopped tracking my rides. And I've decided to just let go of my expectations of how a ride should be and accept it for what it is. It's fun.